nominations. I commend the bill to the House.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Balmain.
Mr. Speaker.
Sorry, mate, I didn't see you.
You're all right. Don't actually miss me. Well, you couldn't see me.
I see you paying attention.
Order. The member for Wallandilly. I call the member for Balmain.
Thank you very much, Mr. Temporary Speaker. I'm delighted to be here back in Parliament after a short recess, and I'm very pleased to be making a contribution to the Sydney Water Catchment Management Amendment Board Members Bill 2012. It's interesting, isn't it, Mr. Temporary Speaker, that I rise here today. I'm not in favour, we Greens are not in favour of this bill, because we believe the Nature Conservation Council and New South Wales Farmers Association have a good role. And isn't it interesting that just when the New South Wales farmers and the Nature Conservation Council and the Greens were together outside campaigning on the CSG issue, we are in here today.
Order. Government benches will come to order. Government benches will come to order. The member for Balmain will be heard in silence. There will not be. I will not allow that sort of outburst to continue. I call the member for Balmain.
Mr. Temporary Speaker, I'm proud again to be here supporting the New South Wales Farmers Association and the Nature Conservation Council, as we did yesterday, to make sure that those organisations
on a call.
Have a legitimate part to play, and they have a legitimate part to play in the Sydney Water Catchment Management Board. As we've heard, Mr. Temporary Speaker, the Sydney Water Catchment Management Amendment Board Members Bill will exclude from the board the board of the Sydney Catchment Authority, the nominees of the Nature Conservation Council, the New South Wales Farmers Association, and an elected councillor from a council in the elected area. In our view, Mr. Temporary Speaker, very important stakeholders. Stakeholders that have a right to be represented. And Mr. Temporary Speaker, I would agree with the government. I would strongly agree with them if no other appointees were able to be appointed to this board. But we know that this board can have between 4 and 8 members. So in fact, there's 5 other members that the minister could appoint. And we know that there's 3 members, one from local government, one from farmers, one from the Nature Conservation Council, 5 other members. And anyone that counts know the minister can be sure that the appointees that the minister places there would be in a majority, that those 5 members can be selected using this so-called merit argument, which is a very subjective argument. One person's merit may be different to another person's merit, but we need to make sure farmers are represented. We need to make sure the Nature Conservation Council is represented, and we need to make sure that local government is represented. And the reason why they're important stakeholders, is because it acts as a block, Mr. Temporary Speaker, against any minister who may well be over-enthusiastic or cavalier, and it ensures that the stakeholders in this matter are included as they should be. And it ensures that this so-called merit assessment, which we're yet to see the basis of, how is this merit assessment done? Who makes the merit assessment? If the merit assessment is determined, does it then mean that the minister is required to comply with that merit assessment? Are there questions I think the minister should be asked, and I would respectfully ask that the minister address that. So this merit-based process, is the minister required to adhere to the determinations of this merit-based process? Who will be undertaking the merit-based process? Because, as I've mentioned before, one person's merit can be another person's disagreement. Now, the board members whose positions will be abolished will be Mr. John Asquith from the Nature Conservation Council. He's the chairman of the Community Environment Network and a member of the Hunter Central Rivers Catchment Management Authority Board. Mr. Asquith is a member of the Hunter National Parks and Wildlife Service Advisory Committee and has been a trustee of the New South Wales Environment Trust and a member of the New South Wales Bushfire Coordinating Committee. He holds a Bachelor of Engineering and a Masters of Arts, and is a member of the board's Audit and Risk Committee and Asset Management Committee. I would say an excellent member. And the member representing New South Wales farmers, Mr. Kenneth Wheelwright. He manages a grazing property on the upper reaches of the Wallandilly River. He has an active interest in developing sustainable, regenerative and profitable farm management practices. He's also a director of the Hawkesbury Nepean Catchment Management Authority Board. He holds a Bachelor of Rural Science from the University of New England, a Bachelor of Business from Charles Sturt University, and is trained in management. He's also the chair of the board's Catchment and Water Quality Committee. And we also have Mr. Whipper, Deputy Mayor Whipper. He's the Deputy Mayor of Wingecarribee Shire Council, currently his 3rd term as a councillor, strong environmental advocate. He's served as a member of the Robinson Environmental Protection Society since 1992. He's a councillor representative on the Hawkesbury-Nepean Local Government Advisory Group. He served as a member of the Hawkesbury-Nepean Catchment Management Board from 2000 to 2003 and as chair of the Hawkesbury-Nepean Catchment Management Authority Establishment Team until May 2004. Between July 2006 and November 2007, he was a councillor representative on the Upper Nepean Groundwater Community Reference Group. All very solid, upstanding members of the community. He can apply. He can apply. But as I mentioned, Mr. Temporary Speaker, the reason why it's important to make sure that key stakeholders are represented is to ensure that those stakeholders we know will have a place. Because under one minister, they might be seen as legitimate, but under another minister they may not. This is an important measure to ensure that stakeholders are included. The minister still has a majority of appointees. The minister can still have 5 appointees, with only 3 coming from stakeholder groups. But in our view, it's legitimate, it's good practice, and it's important to include key stakeholders. Now, the minister says that it's transparent. Well, if it's transparent, what is the selection process? Who decides the merit-based process? Does the minister have to accept the determination of that merit-based process? If there is a merit-based process, is the minister required to comply with that merit-based process? Well, it's not in the legislation. It's not in the legislation. So what we can assume from that is the minister can look at this list of merit-based appointments and decide a different list if he or she chooses. It's not in the legislation that requires the minister to take the advice of this merit-based process, which still hasn't been confirmed anyway. My friend, the member for Murray-Darling, actually a member who I know is very interested in a range of issues, I thought would have been keen to support New South Wales farmers, having farmers as a stakeholder there, not as a majority, but as three members. They're entitled to be, but as stakeholders, Mr. Temporary Chair, they are not able.
What do you want to ring fence the board?
Order. Government benches will come to order. The member for Murray-Darling.
I welcome the interaction of members opposite because it's striking a nerve, Mr. Temporary Speaker. It's striking a nerve because the National Party members were in here with New South Wales farmers out there with the majority of the community, and again we're in here supporting New South Wales farmers. Again. And it's important that we're here supporting their right to participate.
Point of order, the member for Bathurst. The member for Balmain will resume his seat. And the member for Bathurst.
I asked the member to come back to the order of the bill. He's clearly not on track or actually in relevance to the bill. He's talking about outside issues, something that has got nothing to do with the bill. So I ask you to call him back to the bill that is here for discussion.
As much as I appreciate the creative licence of the member for Balmain, I think he should come back to the bill. But I do believe that the member for Mount Druitt was rising on the point of order.
Just going to speak on that.
Government whip, opposition whip.
Mr. Temporary Speaker, the member is speaking to the second reading stage of this bill. This is a broad-ranging component. This is not the committee stage where we're talking about each clause by clause of the bill. This is a wide-ranging debate. He's actually talking about the New South Wales Farmers Association and their role, which has actually been dropped from the original legislation. He's well within the
look, to the point of order, whilst I'm happy for people to talk about the membership and its composition, I think that the member for Balmain is probably going a little bit wider than that, but I'd ask him to continue with his comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Temporary Speaker. I appreciate the feedback from members in this place because it's clear from the discussion that we have had already at this stage that these stakeholders, which are not the majority on the board, only 3, the minister can still appoint 5, have an important role to play. And I take the minister's interjection that it wasn't transparent. And I'm not here defending the former government's record. I'm the first one to say that the former government was not transparent. And as a local community, as a member in the local community, I saw that at first blush, where people were included and put on boards and so on, not in a clear way. But I do believe that it's important to keep stakeholders, because it means that ministers, regardless of their political persuasion, are required to keep those key stakeholders, not in a majority on the board, but in a minority, to make sure those stakeholders are represented. Can I say, in conclusion, Mr. Temporary Speaker, that arguments about appointing board members in a merit-based system does have some merit if the majority of the board was to be appointed by some other stakeholder method. We believe it's important stakeholders are included. The skills that these members have is obvious and clear, and it's important that the assumptions that environmentalists or farmers or local government representatives do not have the expertise is not the way forward, and that the existing arrangements should not be changed.
Mr Acting Speaker. Order.